What's going on, guys? It's Sadiq. Welcome to Experiences with Sadiq, where communication is key, advocating for the people's bliss, and knowledge, it's inspiring. Today, we're going to talk about two different market styles in real estate, a seller's market and a buyer's market. We're going to get started. Let's go. So seller's market and buyer's market is simple economics. It's all about supply and demand. In addition to that, pricing. Let's say, for instance, in the seller's market, you have less supplies, but more of a demand. It basically creates a higher price point. Because why? Obviously, if there's not enough supply for a certain product or item, but you have a slew of demand for it, in order for it to be sensible, economically speaking, the prices itself has to adjust. So that means increasing the price slightly. Now, on the buyer side of things, it's the reverse. That's when there's more supplies, but less demand for something. Now it creates a control environment for the buyer themselves. Why? Once again, simple economics. When you have less demand for something, but more supply of the other thing, that means the demand have more options for that supply or for that product. What does that turn into? The buyers themselves, they can actually negotiate for that supply, or they can move on elsewhere and look for something similar to that product that they liked originally. So it just gives the buyer more options to choose from in a buyer's market standpoint. Now we're going to talk about how that breaks down in real estate. Let's go. First of all, what type of market are we in right now, people? Can anyone guess? Nah? Listen, it's a seller's market because there's less supply, but there's a high demand for the product, and that product is the house itself or the housing itself. We have a lot of buyers who are looking for homes. So the sellers, they can actually adjust or ask for a little bit more in terms of the purchase price that when it comes to putting their property on the market. You also create a bidding war situation for the buyer. And the sellers can actually take advantage of this situation, because when there's a bidding war on a home, that means there's a good opportunity for the sellers to get more for their property. When it comes to more, that means more top dollar for the bank account. Ching, ching, ching. More money, we're all happy, right? Right. On the buyer side, they can actually take advantage of what's going on in the economy right now, which is basically lower interest rate. So yes, supply might not be there for them, but the opportunity to take advantage of what's also going on, it's also a plus for the buyer itself. Now, in order for it to become a buyer's market, that means if there's a lot of homes in the market, but not enough buyers looking around or shopping around for homes, the ball is now in the buyer's hand. When there's a lot of properties, that means a lot more selections. Bidding wars are somewhat avoided. So which is a really, really good thing when it comes to a buyer's market. When it comes to demand and supply, which affects price, for a seller's market, there needs to be low supply, high demand. In the buyer's market, there needs to be less demand, more supply. That's how simple economics work. That's what creates a buyer's market and a seller's market. Now let's talk about the disadvantages and the advantages of a seller's market, as well as the disadvantages and the advantages of a buyer's market. Let's go. The advantages in the seller's market is that the sellers can actually price their property based on somewhat what they think their property is worth, right? The seller's advantage as well is also a bidding war situation. When there's a bidding war, that means that the seller has an opportunity to get more for their property. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages of those two. If a seller is pricing their property high, there's a possibility that that property might not get appraised according to what the offer came in. So if a buyer comes in and puts an offer that's $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 above the normal asking price, mind you, that property still has to go and get appraised by an appraiser that's hired through the bank. Now that appraiser will come out, assess the property, and say that this property is valued at this amount. So hypothetically speaking, if a property is $250,000, the buyer says that they're gonna offer $275,000 for the property. That's about a $25,000 swing from the purchase price to the offer price. But when the appraiser comes in and the appraiser assesses the whole property and is like, you know what, this property is now worth $275,000 because of this, this, and this, it's really worth $265,000. Now that creates somewhat of an issue. It's a plus for the buyer, but it might be a little issue for the seller. The seller will be expecting that they're gonna get $275,000 for their property, but due to the appraisal, coming back at $265,000, you know, that might upset a seller to a degree. That's why you have to, in the seller's market, sellers and agents need to be careful in regards to how they price the property, because they don't want to price the property wrong where the appraiser comes back less than what the purchase price is or what the seller thought they could get for the property. In addition to that, when you create bidding wars, when there's a bidding war amongst a property, that could also lead to the potential of the property not appraising right as well. Why? Because when there's multiple bidding offers going on, the seller has to decide what's the best option for them when it comes to a bidding war. So a lot of times sellers will have to think about what family do they think will best fit this property, right? But the disadvantage side of that is for the buyer, because the buyers are hoping that they can get this property, but they're in a bidding war situation. So whatever bid they put in might get knocked off by a potential bid that's probably better than the offer that any of the buyers put in. Just have to be somewhat more conscious in regards to the possibility that your bid might not get accepted. The advantages when it comes to a buyer's market is that the buyer themselves have the option to actually select properties that they're interested in. So now a buyer doesn't have to worry about, I'm stuck with this property, because there's not a lot of properties on the market. No, in this situation, in the buyer's market, there's a lot of properties available for a buyer to actually select from. So if a buyer's not typically happy with one property, they can move on to the next and call it a day and continue on with their search till they find a property that fits their family's needs. Also, in the advantage for a buyer as well in a buyer's market is just knowing that they have the option to be able to put the ball in their court, because what happens now in the buyer's market, when you have less buyers, prices of the homes are adjusted. So that means if a buyer sees that this property is priced at this point, but the buyer doesn't feel like the house is worth that, the buyer can actually negotiate and put whatever offer they think or they feel is best for that property. But don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, the seller can actually still decide if they want to move forward with that offer or not. They do have the option too. But in terms of the advantage that the buyer has, they kind of control price to a degree. All right, because if they feel the price is too high, they can actually continue moving on. So that's the advantages for the buyer. The disadvantage for the buyer is that their offer could still be rejected by the seller. Like I mentioned just a few seconds ago, if the seller feels the price is not what they want from the buyer, the seller can still reject it and say, nah, we don't want that. So yes, the buyer might have the ball in their court. They can actually depict the price on the property, but at the end of the day, the seller still have an option if they want to move forward or not. So you guys know what it is. It's your man Sadiq from Experiences with Sadiq, where communication is key, advocating for the people's bliss, and knowledge, it's inspiring. You guys can catch me on all my social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, Experiences with Sadiq, or Instagram, Experiences with Sadiq. If you're looking to sell or buy real estate, hit me up on IG, Sadiq Davies, or Facebook, Sell with Sadiq. Other than that, until next time, on Experiences with Sadiq. Catch you guys soon.